early today. Uh, I'm always late, so I decided to be a little bit early today. Um, wow, I look good. Anyway, um, Robert Whittaker versus Reinier the Uh, this is this is kind of a tricky fight at this point, because Robert Whittaker is still in his prime to some extent. You know, the fact that he's still like around 34 means he's still at a point whereby he can still make a title run, right? Playboy, uh, nobody here today. I mean, the stream just started, man, and I'm a bit early. I anticipate that a couple of people will start coming in. But even if they watch afterwards, that's also fine. So Robert Whittaker obviously in this particular fight is going to have the experience advantage, but I feel like he's absorbed so much damage throughout his career that I don't know if he's going to be able to withstand the onslaught of Reinier de Ridder. Reinier de Ridder has previous championship experience. Obviously, it's not in the UFC, but I think he was a double champion, if I'm not mistaken. Um, so so Reinier de Ridder has championship experience. I think double champ status. I stand to be corrected, by the way. Obviously, striking wise, Robert Whittaker is going to be a little bit better. But before I even go that route, René Derrida is going to a 4.5 inch reach advantage, which is massive in this particular situation, especially if this fight stays on. It's going to help René Derrida, even though I do feel like Robert Whittaker is going to have the striking, technical striking advantage. I think the reach is going to help René Derrida a lot. As far as finishing ability and power, I'd say René Derrida has a bit of power. Um, yeah, I think he has a little bit more power than Robert Whittaker. Robert Whittaker normally wins via decision, and when you look at their respective finishing rates, I mean, René Derrida has a 90% finishing rate, whereas Robert Whittaker has a 59% finishing rate. So clearly, René Derrida has the power to actually finish the fight. Obviously, submission, he normally wins via submission, but he has the power to actually finish a fight. Um, and especially because we saw how his shots were bothering Bo Nickel. Striking volume, obviously Robert Whittaker is going to have a bit of an advantage as far as volume goes. Um, Technical striking, I don't know. Let me go to defense first. I feel like Rene Derrida might be a little bit better defensively, to be honest. Yeah, I genuinely think he might be better, but it's probably largely because of the wrestling, right? The technical striking ability obviously goes to Robert Whittaker, as I've been saying, but when you take into consideration the fact that, in all honesty, if you tell me who's more technical at striking between Dricus Duplessis and Robert Whittaker, obviously I'm going to say Robert Whittaker, but at the end of the day, Dricus Duplessis wins on the feet somehow, right? So technical striking ability sometimes does not matter, and I feel like Reinier Derrida in this particular situation has the same type of style of striking, and I think it's going to give him a massive advantage in this particular fight because I think his awkwardness might give Robert Whittaker a bit of a problem. Um, and obviously because of the mixing it up, right? Rene Derrida has the wrestling to actually confuse Robert Whittaker, and when you combine the fact that there's wrestling in the pocket, right? The mere fact that there's wrestling, offensive wrestling in Rene Derrida's pocket, I think is going to influence how the striking exchanges go, especially because I think Robert Whittaker probably might be a little bit traumatized by what Hamza Chimaev did to him. So yeah, I generally do feel like Rene Derrida is going to have a really decent shot on the feet, right? But Then again, look at what Robert Whittaker did to Ikram Aliskerov. And I'm not saying Reinier Derrida is Ikram Aliskerov. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying Robert Whittaker, when he's counted out, he comes back 10 times better. So yeah, on the feed, I feel like the grappling is going to play a factor, and is going to make Robert Whittaker fight a little bit more cautiously. Yeah, I think he's going to fight a little bit more cautiously. Reinier the coin tosser. I should flip a coin for this one. I wouldn't blame you, to be honest. So yeah, to be honest, as far as striking, Reinier Derrida has a 4.5-inch reach. Even though Robert Whittaker is going to have a volume advantage, I feel like Reinier Derrida has a power advantage. He has a finishing advantage. 90% finish, 90% finishing rate versus a 59% finishing rate. I mean, it clearly shows that Reinier Derrida is a finisher. Defensively, I feel like Reinier Derrida is going to be a little bit better on the feet, right? So when you combine the defensiveness, obviously it's because of the wrestling, but he is a little bit better defensively. He has a 4.5-inch reach advantage. I mean, like I said in the beginning of this stream, if you ask me about technique, obviously it's Robert Whittaker, but the technique did not help him against Dricus Duplessis, who I don't think is really that technically good. But still, Dricus Duplessis still beat Robert Whittaker. So I think Rene Derrida has the same kind of unorthodox um, th- that might give Robert Whittaker a couple of problems when it comes to striking. So yeah, on the feed, I don't know. I feel like Rene Derrida is awkward. Like I said, if you ask me, like if we remove wrestling and we say just striking, I don't know, man. I feel like Robert Whittaker might win, but I feel like Renier Derrida's awkwardness might give him some type of a shot, plus the reach advantage. But we're not just talking about striking. Renier Derrida can submit you, and Robert Whittaker knows that. And like I said before, I feel like Hamza Chimaev probably might have traumatized the Robert Whittaker a little bit. Maybe I'm exaggerating, but I think it's going to make him a little bit more cautious than usual. Obviously, because he's facing another grappler who has some type of an awkward striking ability. I picked Rene Derrida, by the way, against Bo Nigel, right? A lot of people were on Bo Nigel and they were like, yeah, Bo Nigel is going to beat this guy up and everything like that. And I was like, nah, fam, I'm not going with the majority. I picked Rene Derrida when everyone was on Bo Nigel, and I was right, right? So I'm picking Reinier Derrida again. My subscribers changed their late. They initially picked Robert Whittaker, and then they switched to Reinier Derrida. So, but in this particular fight, I don't know, man. Robert Whittaker is a veteran. I can see him actually coming in there with a decent takedown defense and actually keeping it on the feet. It's a 5 rounder. Reinier Derrida might do really well early, and then after Robert Whittaker somehow finds a way to actually wrestle better defensively, because I heard Robert Whittaker saying after the Hamza Chimaev fight, he implemented some few things that are going to improve his game a little bit. So I don't know what type of Robert Whittaker to expect. Oof, I don't know, man. Rene the coin tosser, I'm going to respond to you, my guy. You know I always do. Um, so on the feed, before I go to grappling, obviously we all know what's going to happen in grappling. That's why I'm spending so much time in the striking. Striking advantages. Robert Whittaker has the volume. He's going to be throwing a little bit more than Rene Derrida. Obviously, Robert Whittaker has the experience, but UFC experience. But we can't necessarily ignore the fact that, and I personally feel like it's UFC, it's one championship, and then Bellator, right? And Rene Derrida, you can correct me, in the comment section. I think Rene Derrida held 2 division championships, if I'm not mistaken, in one. But even if the competition was not as high as the UFC, he has high level competition experience. So even though I can give um, Robert Whittaker the experience because he has a lot of experience in the UFC, um, we can't ignore the fact that Reinier Derrida was a champion in one, right? That's massive, and it's reflected by the fact that he's undefeated in the UFC. I think he submitted Gerald Mearshot, if I'm not mistaken. I remember them fight. I think third round submission, if I'm not mistaken. Um, and then obviously the pick of Bo Nigel, one of my best picks since I started this channel, beating Bo Nigel. And then I forgot that, but I think he's 3-0 in the UFC. I forgot the fight before. What do you call him, Bo Nigel? Man. So I don't know, man. On the feed, it might get tricky, which is not good for Robert Whittaker. If I'm struggling to give Robert Whittaker an advantage on the feed, then it might be a little bit tricky. But like I said, Robert Whittaker is a veteran in the UFC, and he himself has said, I need to adjust some few things, and he said something like he's going to be a little bit more frequent in the training sessions. So since the loss to Hamza Chimaev, I generally like he probably might have improved. Who knows? Um, so yeah, on the feed, I don't know. Robert Whittaker has the experience. He's more technically better. He has volume. Defensively, I go Reinier Derrida. I think defensively, it might be because of the wrestling. It might also be because of the 4.5 advantage that he has. Uh, yeah, on the feet, I don't know who will have the advantage. I'm not going to. Uh, Technically, it's Robert Whittaker, but I mean, technique, in all honesty, does not always win the fight. Like unfortunately that's how it is, right? Technique not does not always win the fight. Um, an example is Dricus du Plessis. Dricus du Plessis is not the most technical striker, but he was able to beat the living crap out of Sean Strickland. Obviously, Israel Adesanya was beating him up a little bit on the feet. He was able to mix it up. But my point is, Dricus du Plessis is not like a technical striker. He has an awkward, or rather, a unique type of striking that's effective. So having the technique doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be the better fighter or rather the better striker. And I think that's the situation with Reinier Derrida. Even against Bo Nigel looked a little bit like he is technically better, but just Reinier Derrida was landing more. Like even with Bo Nigel looking technically better, Reinier Derrida was more effective, right? So that's what counts. It doesn't matter how technical you are, as long as you are successful with your strikes. That's all that matters. Um, so it's going to be interesting to see how this one plays out on the feed. So I generally am not going to give anyone an advantage on the feed. I feel like both of them have some advantages. Um, I think Reinier Derrida defensively is better. Robert Whittaker is offensively better. So yeah, on the feed, I don't feel like I'm giving anyone an advantage. On the ground, Robert Whittaker has pretty decent takedown defense. Reinier Derrida shoots a lot. His entries are not particularly the best, but he is still pretty decently successful as far as the grappling goes. So I obviously am going to give the advantage to Reinier Derrida. I don't think Robert Whittaker is even going to attempt to take the fight to the ground. But I genuinely do think that probably that might be Reinier Derrida's goal coming into this fight. Maybe exchanging with Robert Whittaker a little bit and just shooting and finding a way to control him. If Robert Whittaker is improved, we might see a situation where he just controls him. I don't know how Reinier Derrida is going to do in the championship rounds because even though, despite the fact that I feel like he looked sensational against Bo Nickel, and I'm still proud of that pick. This whole week, I'm going to actually reiterate that I picked Reinier Derrida to upset Bo Nickel. Anyway, um, I haven't seen Reinier Derrida Obviously outside of one championship, like in the UFC in championship rounds, but he does have that experience, as a champion in one. So maybe that's not going to matter too much. Um, Robert Whittaker in this situation has absorbed so much damage. Both of them are the same age at 34, but Robert Whittaker has been, his jaw has been broken, he's been knocked out, he's been in wars. Like, I don't know, I feel like Robert Whittaker has so much damage that has accumulated. He's still really good, right? It just takes a special kind of a fighter, because when you look at it, the people that Robert Whittaker has lost to are really good fighters. Like Robert Whittaker in the middleweight division has lost to Israel Adesanya, former pound for pound number one two-time middleweight champion. Dricus Duplessis, current middleweight champion on his streak. Um, Hamza Chimaev, one of the scariest athletes in the UFC right now, and who I think is going to be a champion. So if Hamza Chimaev actually becomes a champion, which I think is going to happen, Robert Whittaker will have only lost to champions. So if Reinier beats Robert Whittaker, he is potentially going to be a champion. But I don't think it's going to happen with Hamza Chimaev at the top. But still, Robert Whittaker has lost to talented fighters. So I'm not necessarily saying, oh, he's washed because he lost to Chimaev. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that I feel like he's accumulated so much damage. I feel like he is too one-dimensional. Even though he has some level of grappling, it's too elite, in my opinion. He doesn't have that. I mean, he has knockout power. We saw it against Ikram Aliskerov, but it's not something that regularly happens. Like his 59% finishing rate illustrates that he will occasionally find a finish, but that's not something he normally does, right? So I don't know, man. Versus Reinier Derrida with a 90% finishing rate, right? And I think he's had all finishes in the UFC, if I'm not mistaken. I think he submitted Gerald Mearshad. He submitted someone else. I forgot who he fought after that, and then he finished Bo Nickel. So far, Reinier Derrida is 3-0 with three finishes in the UFC. Robert Whittaker is not like a finisher. If he's going to win, in all likelihood, it's probably going to be via decision. Um, so yeah, obviously my subscribers changed their pick late. They are going with Reinier Derrida. Initially from the get go, I picked Reinier Derrida. I think it's going to be an interesting fight. The middleweight division is quite interesting right now. I'm excited. So yeah, officially my subscribers and I are going with Reinier Derrida. In no way am I saying Robert Whittaker has washed. He might surprise us, especially because this is a massive jump up in competition for Reinier Derrida. But once again, I will say this, in my opinion, UFC is number one in terms of competition, followed by one. Bellator is number three. Bellator and PFL are number three in my opinion, right? So, I mean, experience from one for Reinier Derrida, I think is pretty decent, which is why it's translating a little bit better. And when you look at for example, Demetrius Johnson, who is one of the greatest of all time, he went from the UFC to one championship and lost, right? Obviously, he was able to come back and actually win the title and everything like that, but it just shows that there's competition, there's high level competition in one championship, right? So, um, I don't know. I don't know if the experience that Robert Whittaker has is going to be that massive. I'm favoring Rene Derrida. Let me respond to you guys so that I can go to the next fight. Rene the coin tosser, I think Rob should piece him up, but RDR is just a big oaf and could bully him around. I can see Rene as a big knee up the middle catching Rob, yeah. I had Rene against Mobutu. That's what made me a fan of his. He shut that wrestler fraud up. Drizzy go, the Rob Whittaker is trash, bro. I go the other guy. Come on, man. That's brutal, man. I don't think Robert Whittaker is trash. Come on. Drizzy Gold. Sean Strickland smashes Rob. Uh, I don't know, man. Who has Sean Strickland smashed though? Like Sean Strickland will take you to a decision. Um, Reinier the coin toss. How is Whittaker trash? I'm curious as well. Kevin Holland is trash. Yeah, yeah. I mean, if you are going to talk about people who are trash, I think it's Kevin Holland. Rob got his jaw snapped against Hamza Chimaev. He should have just tried. Come on. Reinier the coin tosser, bro. Hamza is round one is practically unbeatable. Yeah, yeah. Drizzy Gold. Fair play. Rod looked like he just got out of prison. Hamzat will run through DDP, no doubt. I agree. Leandro, D-Rod versus Wonderboy next. Uh, I don't think D-Rod should be ranked. I think just give him to someone who needs a ranking. An upcoming prospect who needs a ranking. I'm not a fan of giving D-Rod like favorable matches. Like, what is he going to do? Make a run? D-Rod is not exciting to me. Like, um, I'm sorry, but I genuinely don't want to one day see D-Rod on the main card of another pay-per-view again. All the best to D-Rod. He's a veteran, but come on, man. René the coin tosser, D-Rod was throwing punches that I felt like someone without an ounce of training could throw better. Leandro, he's so slow, yeah. René the coin tosser, terrible technique, agreed. Leandro, yes. Another coin tosser just proves this ball is shit and you can throw anything to get the W. Nah, I think Kevin Holland is crap. I think he underestimated D Rod, didn't train as much, and saw what happened. Drizzy Gold, Ilya would KO Max the same at 155 though. Nobody beats Ilya at 155. Unfortunately, I agree with you. I think Max Holloway looks like a bigger version of his 145 self, which is still good enough to beat a lot of people at lightweight. But Ilya is special, man. I think it needs someone like Islam to actually beat someone like Ilya. I don't know if or maybe even Aman Sarukian, but even Aman Sarukian does not have the best striking. But I feel like Aman Sarukian has the IQ to not stand too long with Ilya, right? Even if he takes him down, even if Ilya somehow finds a way to stand up, the mistake that Charles Oliveira made was to, after taking him down and Ilya getting up, um, the mistake that he made was like, okay, let's strike. I mean, I think Aman Sarukian is smart enough to know that it's dangerous to stand with this guy. Rather have the match that he had with Islam Makhachev. Just wrestle the whole time. Even if he defends it, at the very least, you're going to lose via decision. Like, rather it be a technical wrestling match, right? Reversals on reversals and everything. Like, I think that's what a man would probably do. So it takes someone really, really, really skilled. I don't think it's smart to actually try to strike with Aman, especially with Ilya, especially if you don't have a lot of good kicks like Islam Makhachev. Like Islam Makhachev would actually be able to manage the distance with his kicks and everything like that. Striking too close into pocket with Ilya Tuporia is very dangerous, and if you don't have the wrestling, it's gonna be problematic because when he gets too close, that's when he can be very dangerous. And if he gets too close, if you have wrestling, you just find a way to take him down. And even if you're not successful, he's going to be a little bit more cautious coming into the pocket with you. So I think it's going to take someone special. Unfortunately, I don't feel like Max Holloway is improved enough to beat Ilya Tuporia. Drizzy, Drizzy Goat Islam versus Jack going to be very interested. I was surprised Jack beat Bilal. Halal Bilal. Even said Jack must have been on PEDs. I think Bilal made a mistake, and I know a lot of people are going to be like, "Nah, he didn't change his strategy." I don't think Bilal trained to wrestle Jack, and it doesn't matter if you have it in your back pocket. Your cardio won't be the same because you are not training wrestling. Striking does not take as much energy as wrestling does. That's why normally when someone who doesn't regularly wrestle tries to wrestle, they normally get tired and they get finished, right? So I feel like Bilal didn't train his wrestling. He was too focused on striking, which worked for him, to some extent. He was able to stand with Jack until a certain point, but he still lost, right? It's like the what do you call it? Erin Blanchfield's strategy. Going in there and striking with Manon Fiorot when you are better on the ground. One of the stupidest things, one of the most stupid things you can ever do. You're like, is he good at striking? Okay, let me give him an advantage over me by doing what he's good at. Like, what the fuck? So yeah, I think he lost that belt because of his ego, unfortunately. Another coin tosser, very possible. Drizzy Gold. Whittaker, Stings, bro. Next. Another coin tosser, JD and Islam. That's a tricky matchup. Drizzy Gold. Whittaker always in a snooze fest like Wonder Girl. Wow. Drizzy Gold. The fair play. Too big. Costa. LOL. Finally got a W. He will not champ material. Yeah, he's not champ material. The Raider by decision is the play. Yeah, highly possible. Antoine, who you think is the dog of the night is? Uh, I don't know, man. At this point, it's hard to say, but keep an eye out for my upsets predictions on the video section. I normally release them on Fridays. Um, OMF Diddy, okay. Shoshat McGee Holland would get smoked at PFL. Shoshat McGee, Daniel Zellhuber is the only Mexican without the Mexican fighting spirit. Wow. Zap Zero Games. My tiny little got lost crossing the Mexican border this morning. Wow. Shoshat McGee, Max versus Dan Hooker would be fire. Yeah, but in all honesty, I would have loved to see Max versus Justin Gaethje, but Justin Gaethje is busy behaving like a spoiled brat right now. Shoshat McGee, Rod moves up, moves in a straight line and will get tangled up in a clinch, get his back taken, and that's a wrap. RD has bad stand up, but has chin to make up for it. And Rob doesn't throw long combos, just splits. I agree. Guys, let me go to the next fight. If you just joined us, you can always rewatch this whole stream. I didn't actually think it would be this long. I love and appreciate all of you. Deuces.